greetings, family. Sister Shanice in the house. Welcome to the Sister Shanice News Desk. Certainly hope that you are already a subscriber of this channel. If not, please do subscribe. If you are one of my supporters on Patreon, thank you so much. Much appreciate love your support. Today's News Desk story is going to be looking at the incident that happened in Maui, because it is being described as a deliberate act of carnage and not a natural disaster. And there is compelling evidence to suggest that this may very well be the case. Maui in Hawaii was an exceptionally beautiful paradise island that was home to indigenous Hawaiians. The first white European to set foot on the island was on the 29th of May, 1786, and he was Jean-Francois de Luc de la Perouse. He was followed by an American trader, Simon Metcalfe, who came to Maui in 1790, then followed by Christian missionaries who made a huge impact on the people's lives. Apart from converting them to Christianity, they established schools and churches that instilled European values, culture, and superiority, paving the way for integration and racial diversification of the island. Over the centuries, the indigenous Hawaiian people were reduced to about 10.7% of the overall population, superseded by whites, who were the largest racial group at 35.8%. Christianity was a big factor in this racial diversity. The island, with its beautiful white sandy, exquisite coral beaches, all year round warm temperatures, gradually transformed the island into a popular tourist holiday resort and home for the wealthy who could afford to buy land and afford to live there in their high-priced homes. So very interestingly, Oprah Winfrey, for example, in March 2023, 5 months before the tragic fire, significantly increased her property portfolio in the central part of Maui by buying an extra 870 acres of land for $6.6 billion, bringing her total land ownership portfolio, it said, in the region up to about 1,000 acres. Maui was gradually emerging as a paradise island for the rich and famous, a recipe that attracted big investors with an appetite for regentrification, but without the people and ideally a clean canvas to work with. So what could justify them clearing the land and moving in to lay claim to the island without most of its population? Is this where the storms, fires, or other seemingly natural catastrophe that causes disastrous damage comes into play to clear the terrain? So independent investigative journalists such as Sarah Westall have pointed to a pattern of big investor land takeovers for regentrification repeating itself over and over again in America. New Orleans after Katrina, Paradise, and now Maui. Devastating disasters that dislodges communities that were built up over generations, that change the racial dynamics, are desired results in densely Black populated areas, and big business cashing in on the rebuilding and reselling of the new offices, new houses, new high-tech infrastructure. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. What we do know is that following the devastating Category 5 Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, an estimated 80% of Katrina evacuees were temporarily relocated to Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, or Arkansas, decimating the vibrant Black community of New Orleans. Big investors moved into the new city, regentrified the area, built houses and set the prices so high, many local survivors were unable to return to the area where they had previously lived, leaving New Orleans with less than 80% of its pre-Katrina population. At least 100,000 people were never able to make it back to New Orleans, causing a demographic shift that cut deeply into the city's Black majority. Roll forward to August 2023 in Lahaina, town of Hawaii, the dream location for big investors. Fires devastated the entire beachfront region of the island. The world watched on their TV screens as unnatural wildfire, swept by major winds, scorched the island of Maui in what was said to be the deadliest in modern US history. As of September 2023, authorities are confirming the death toll at 114, claiming that identification process involved was complicated as the wildfires have swept out entire families. However, counterclaims are mounting about the authorities deliberately hiding the true number of deaths. Nick Soto, for example, tweeted that the morgues in Maui were full and the Hawaiian government are still lying about the death count. What is known is that about 78% of the region's burn zone included the historical seaside town of Lahaina, which was home to about 12,000 people. Understandably, lots of questions are being asked about the strange fire, such as what kind of wildfire with such intense ferocity can melt metal, reduce homes to ashes, but leave no burn marks on the tarmac, and leave trees nearby untouched and still standing. Take a look at this video from an aerial view. There is definitely something strange about the wildfire. Its ferocity was able to reduce to ashes selected properties, selected paths of destruction, yet leave the tarmac and the trees untouched and unscathed. Sections of the public are asking and questioning the likelihood of an impartial investigation and transparency into this strange phenomena. Why? Because the Maui police chief, John Pelletier, is both the police chief of Maui and the coroner who's investigating the deaths. These are roles that should be separate to provide transparency and independency in an investigation to avoid conflicts of interest, but that is not the case in this incident. There are also reports that the US Air Force officials were using Maui as its space regional command, and that in February 2023, there was an accident that led to over 700 gallons of fuel being spilled in the same area that was ablaze and devastated the island. There's also claimed that a new weapon of war was actually being used. It's claimed that the freak weather patterns, the unusual storm behavior, and unprecedented number of fluke fires seem to be on the increase. There certainly seems to be a pattern emerging. It's suggested that possibly something out of the ordinary is actually at play. Some recent events point to ground-based weather weapon devices, direct energy weapons, HARP, the high-frequency weaponized weather tool that Dr. Bernard Eastland spoke of. He said that the US military had this secret weapon that was able to manipulate the weather, and that has provided the US with a universal hammer for geopolitical warfare. These weather tools cause total destruction to homes and properties and are unprecedented and extensive, creating the worst case scenarios for the territories affected. In fact, if you look at the impact on Maui from an aerial view, you can see the extent of the devastation and the damage. And some are saying it looks worse than 1,000 bombs that have been dropped on individual homes. Almost all the buildings in Lahaina have been obliterated and have disintegrated into ashes. Thousands of people are likely to have perished in the fire. We can see from the lines of cars that people were attempting to leave the area in their cars. So you probably had elderly, young people, children, in whole entire families in each of those cars, all trying to escape the fire. But there are claims that the exit points were actually blocked by FEMA personnel. So claims are being made that Maui wildfire was a pretext to reclaim Lahaina, to turn it into a smart city. These claims, of course, are being hotly refuted as conspiracy theories by the fact checkers. But who checks the fact checkers? Of all of the theories, one of the most plausible explanations, in my opinion, is the microwave laser beam technology combined with a weather manipulation weapon.
Now, when we look at all the climate change narrative that they're going to try to push, but they're not going to talk about the Weather Modification Act of 1976. I highly recommend everybody look into this act, because who is involved in the weather modification activities? Department of Agriculture, Department of Defense, Department of Interior, EPA, and NASA. So if they're modifying the weather, then could they have caused this event? So if we see that the Department of Defense and other factions are responsible for modifying the weather, well then if we look at direct energy weapons, we can maybe see how this can all relate to this event.
A hard weather manipulation tool that brought the cover for the microwave beam technology that was hidden inside and acted as a direct zapper hammer tool used to execute the damage to precision. Take a listen to this.
And while the Earth's climate does change, most of what we are seeing is contrived. The fires breaking out all across the world are being blamed on climate change, even though hundreds of arsonists have been caught starting them. Most recently, 79 people were arrested for starting fires in Greece. Direct energy weapons, or DEWs, are able to start fires from above and can utilize microwave technology to burn homes from within. In 2013, the mainstream media reported that we were able to make rain and lightning.
I mean, lasers? Really? To change the weather?
By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning.
Earthquakes and explosives can trigger tsunamis. These are the technologies that we know of, and that only leaves volcanoes and tornadoes. Funded by Peter Thiel, AVE Tech Energy Corporation began work in 2012 on a device to produce a 130-foot tall tornado. And a former U.S. intelligence officer recently told State of the Nation that the U.S. has already triggered a volcano. Climate change is not only a hoax, it's a depopulation program, and our entire government is going along with it.
And here's a video that asks the question, how is it that this bizarre situation is even possible?
Can anyone truly explain how cars are incinerated in this type of way? That a natural fire can literally cremate every single thing in its supposed path. I've never seen anything like this in my life, and I'm genuinely asking a question to anyone that has any kind of knowledge or experience in firefighting or anything like these natural disasters. Is this a natural occurrence that this can possibly happen? Something that can look like an apocalypse came through, that something just literally incinerated everything in its path. Can someone please comment below?
The answer is that under normal circumstances, it's not possible. It's just like the supposed two planes that collapsed, melted, and turned metal into dust at the two Trade Center Twin Towers. The families of the victims of Maui need answers. The indigenous people need answers. The public and the world needs answers. But will we get the answers? It remains to be seen. There's certainly a lot of questions that need to be answered here. Sister Shanice, out of here for now.